Don't bury the lead. Just say right away what you want or what you need or what's important.
Welcome to Agency for Change, a podcast from KidGlov that brings you the stories of change makers who are actively working to improve our communities. In every episode, we'll meet with people who are making a lasting impact in the places we call home.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Agency for Change podcast. I'm Lynn Weinman, President and Chief Strategist at KidGlov. So, what does it really mean to feel like you have enough or that you are enough? In this episode, I sit down with Brandon Hatton. He is the President and Chief Investment Officer of Conscious Wealth, for a conversation that took an unexpectedly personal turn. We talked about money and not just dollars and cents, but deeper stories that we each carry, the mindsets we inherit, and the ways those beliefs shape our confidence, our choices, and our impact in the world. Brandon's mission is bold and beautiful to help people rewrite their internal money narratives so they can feel a greater sense of abundance, wholeness, and possibility. And I'll be honest, I found myself getting a little vulnerable too. Brandon, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Lynn. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I am excited to talk to you today. Our mutual friend, Mirin Oka, who was on the podcast, introduced us, and she's told me great things about you, Brandon. And I'd love to just start by having you tell us more about Conscious Wealth.
So Conscious Wealth is the name of our company. It's an investment firm. What we do is we help clients invest and help them talk about investing or just talk about money in general. Some of the things I really like about Conscious Wealth is that it is an investment firm not named after a person.
Yeah.
Typically men, right?
Yeah.
If you look at most investment firms are named after men. It's named after an idea. It's named after an aspiration. It's named after a concept that I've helped develop and co-create, that we are not just our money. Our wealth is actually composed of other things besides our money. And we've codified that with 4 pillars. So the first pillar is financial, but there is physical health. And we all know that if we don't feel well, then we don't feel wealthy. You know the old expression, your health is your wealth.
Oh, yeah.
The other pillar is connection, our family, our friends. There's a Harvard study out there and many others that say that if you have friends and family, you will actually live longer, right? And so it kind of shows how these pillars are connected.
Brandon, I just read that study over the weekend, just 2 days ago. It's amazing. And what a chance to refocus on friendships and relationships.
Yeah. And then the third thing to help you do that is perspective. Yeah. This way that you look at the world, the mindset, whether it's a growth mindset, gratitude, or just your emotional health. And so all 4 of those components are part of our wealth. And so as an investment firm, we are invested in all of those and want to help our clients be able to achieve all of those. And when they're talking about money, not just when they're talking about wealth, to look at it more holistically. And so I wish we didn't have to use the word conscious wealth. I wish the word wealth was just in and of itself resonant of that. But we do need a word more resonant today. We need a qualifier. And so that is more on the mindset of conscious wealth and then the firm that we named after it.
Yeah. You know, Brandon, as a marketer myself, I was eager. One of the reasons I was eager to talk to you is because I know that in my industry, like yours, most advertising agencies are named after their founders, who are usually white men, right? And nothing wrong with that. But why not do something interesting like KidGlov, where we treat people and brands with great care, like Conscious Wealth, where you are doing something that's more than just money. So I'd love to hear more about that. What about you and your vision for the company led you to do something that's different and meaningful like this?
Well, so I have to go back a bit to answer that question. I did not graduate from college, buy a pair of wingtips and go work for one of these really large firms that we're talking about. I actually bought a pair of flip-flops, worked on cruise ships. I did that for 2 years. Then I went and taught. So I opened a school in Egypt. I taught in Lebanon for 2 years. I taught in Brazil for 4 years. So I was an educator. I taught world and American history to some of the wealthiest kids in these other countries, with the knowing that as I taught them to be more compassionate, more loving, more understanding of how the world works, that could cascade down and would cascade down into society. It wasn't until my 30s that I got involved in wealth management and did work with one of those big firms eventually. And for a while, I went into these firms with a real desire, if I'm being completely honest with you, Lynn, to make money.
Yeah.
Right. I just like,
and there's nothing wrong with that, right?
In your work for those firms?
In your 30s, yes. You need that, right? In your 30s,
I had led like 13 years of this bohemian lifestyle. And I remember so many of my friends saying, "Oh, I'm so disappointed." And I was living vicariously through you. And I was like, it's not fun to not have access to money. So the pendulum swung. I went all in on working and I truly lost myself.
Yeah.
So I created wealth while working at these firms, but I actually destroyed all the other pillars of my wealth. There was a destruction of my health. I had a health diagnosis that wasn't pleasant, that I had loss of friends and family because I was working 12-hour days. And I definitely wasn't the bubbly, effervescent person you're talking to today. And so from that loss and the realization like, oh, it is more than this, I began to start questioning everything that I was doing. And I was like, how can I find a way? Because I didn't want to quit. How could I find a way to incorporate this idea of loss? Rilke says, and I just read this quote today, let the darkness be your bell tower.
Ooh.
Like, how could I find this concern, this health concern that I had, this panic at work, this feeling of emptiness, guide me through and help me find some life from it? And it was a journey, but one of the things that I had on my side I had two things on my side. One, I had assets. I had financial assets to hire people to help me get back what had been destroyed. And there's an irony in that, right? Like what was healing me was funded by what helped cause the harm.
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah.
But then also I had all of these wonderful clients who were 10, 15 years older than me, had been through this experience. And some of them were exhibiting conscious wealth, what I call conscious wealth. And so I just started interviewing and talking to them and finding out what did they know that I didn't know and how could I learn from them. Over my career, I've had thousands and thousands of conversations about money. And that is where my learnings come from. I don't make anything up, right? Like this is all just learning from people. And so that led me out of the big firms and into our own independent firm. An ability to do what we do today, which I can't even imagine doing.
Yeah.
When I started this business.
Yeah.
Can't even imagine doing the work that we do now.
So I love it because I'm drawing this out on my paper here as we're talking, but bohemian lifestyle to large firms led you to create conscious wealth, the company, but also the practice of conscious wealth. And it feels to me like, Brandon, you probably had to go through both experiences to get to the other side, right? Like you really had that roller coaster of beautiful lifestyle, no money, lots of money, sad. It felt sad while you were talking about it, sad lifestyle. And then you came out on the other side. Do you feel like that's true?
I do. I want to say one thing is co-create conscious wealth. So it wasn't just me on my own. I've had a lot of people. And as I'm talking to you, I mean, this really, you can't plan these things. I'm just pulling up the poem and you see it because we're on video.
Right.
This Rilke poem, like let your darkness be your bell tower. And so, and if the world has ceased to hear you, say to the silent earth, I flow. To the rushing water, speak, I am. Right. And it says, in this uncontrollable night, be the mystery at the crossroads of your sentence, the meaning discovered there. And so I did discover it, and I find myself today in a position that I'm doing something that I am so uniquely trained for. My whole life has trained me for this. So one of the things we do at our firm is we help mediate difficult conversations.
So a lot of those around finance, life, family, all of those things. Yeah.
Totally. I sit side by side with my colleague who's a licensed therapist, and we sit with families and talk about whatever isn't being talked about. And everything from my training as being a child in a household where we didn't always talk about wasn't being talked about. And I decided myself I was going to be the peacemaker. Nobody asked me to do it. Nobody gave it to me. But I have a whole lifetime of doing that. And then all the healthy and unhealthy things that came with it. I have that lifetime of experience. And I never thought, I'd be able to make that a marketable skill. When I say marketable skill, a skill where people find value for it and will pay you for it. All this time of I spent from my 20s all the way to my mid 30s living overseas. All of these different cultures, these different religions, these different belief systems, and this awareness of how they can all work is uniquely positioned me to do what I've done. And then all of that work in the big firms and the studying and understanding risk and managing risk. So you can only shine back and see like I'm uniquely set up for that.
Right.
But and to give myself some credit, I will say I have been able to have the confidence and born with the confidence to follow the energy to get me here. And I took some really big risks along the way. Really quitting the cruise ship where everything was perfect, ending teaching where it would have been a cush life for me for a long time, right? Leaving the big firm where they did not want me to leave.
Right. I can see that, right? Put in a few more 12-hour days, Brandon.
And they will. And it was a heart-wrenching or gut-wrenching experience leaving, and the firm comes after you and they come after your clients and all of these big risks along the way. So, but if you I've put myself oftentimes in positions that there was no other choice to do it. It was like, I just had to do it because everything was pointing me there, but I didn't know where I was going every time. So you're right. You're right.
I love it so much. Brandon, one thing I want to call out there is I just heard you say that you have on your team, did you say a licensed psychologist that helps you work with clients?
We do have a licensed therapist. When she's working on our team, she is not working. Yeah, so psychologist. When she's working with us, she's working not in that capacity, but she draws upon those skills.
Yeah.
And that she is brought on when a client comes to us and says, we're thinking about how to talk to our kids about money. We're thinking about how we can make a generative form of multi-generational wealth. And we could talk a lot about what generative form of multi-generational wealth means. Or it could be anything that they're not talking about. It could be there could always be somebody in the family who's struggling from substance abuse, and that's creating a rift within the family. We see that with wealthy and unwealthy families, right? So all of those types of things. And so she is a part of our family office services, and we have a really strong relationship and work really well together and enjoy that work.
I have never heard of such a thing. I think that's so fascinating, so unique, and so driven by your mission. So, Brandon, I want to get to some of the things you're doing outside of the firm, but before we do, I do want to ask, so what does this look like in practice? Like, let's say my husband Neil and I are your client, and we're going to come in. What does this look like in practice compared to a more traditional firm?
Sure. So our underlying mission is to cultivate abundance. So that is really important to us. That's our guide. How can we cultivate abundance? Some firms some people will look at our firm and say, oh, well, that means their firm is investing in ESG, or they're investing only in things that will, help the earth. And I haven't found many of those that are good and only good and not bad. we're not against those types of investments, but our mission is to cultivate abundance, which means that we want our clients to feel that they have enough,
Yeah.
that they are enough, and
Yeah.
that they're in a sense of security and not fear, so that they can do great things in the world, because we believe their specific actions of greatness will be stronger than their types of investments. If that's our belief, the difference you're going to have with us is we're going to ask you about your goals in all facets of your life, including health, including leisure, family, work, lifestyle. And the language that you'll hear from us, whether it's in marketing, in your case, or whether it's in conversations around money, is we're going to assume that you're smart enough to understand the strategies that we're showing you. And we're going to assume that we don't need to motivate you with fear or confusion for you to invest with us. We're going to make it because we want you to know what you own. We want you to know why you own it. And we want you to know not just why you own it because what type of investment it is, but why you own it to reach your goals. And if we can get you there, then you can you can loosen your hands a little bit on the steering wheel and go do good things out there.
All right, Brandon, can I be completely vulnerable with you for a moment?
Yeah.
I feel like
your podcast.
It's my podcast. Here I go, being completely vulnerable. I feel like, Brandon, almost every conversation I've ever had about money, I feel like I don't have enough. I feel like I am not enough. And I feel like, what the heck am I doing with my life, right? Which I know logically is not true, right? But there's something about the conversation related to money that often stirs the very opposite emotions. Because I wrote these words down. You said, I want our clients to feel like they have enough, they are enough, and they can go out into the world and do great things. I mean, that's got to be completely differentiating for you.
Yeah, it's the only way we can operate.
Yeah, fantastic.
So I'd like to respond to your feelings and what you stated. And let me ask you another question, which we oftentimes ask our clients, and we can see if we get back there or not. Lynn, what was your earliest memory about money?
Oh, all right. Well, let's go even deeper. I had very young parents who were still in college when I was a young child, and I remember money being very scarce.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we always had what we needed, but in the early days, there wasn't a lot of extra.
Yeah. And so what you just stated was a money memory. And that money memory can go two ways. It can go, there's never enough money, so I'm just going to keep spending it and be frivolous. Or it can be, I'm going to own that. I'm going to own that. And that I'm going to keep reinforcing that through life. That's only one memory, and there's had tons of memories along the way. But in the book, Conscious Wealth, I encourage people to examine their money memories and make timelines of their money. What were all of the memories that I had around money? Were they scarce? Were they abundant? Right? Did they invoke fear? And figure out, and then once you kind of write all of those money memories down, then you can ask yourself, is that still true today?
Yeah.
Is it true? And so I guess I can ask you now, is that true today?
Not really. I've worked hard. My husband's worked hard. We have a business, we've saved, but yet still there's something in there, right? And Brandon, if I'm going to be completely vulnerable with you one more time, 3 times, same podcast, my family, I live on a family farm that was homesteaded by my great-great-great-grandfather who left Prussia because there was not enough money in his family to survive. So he came to America to stake his claim. So I kind of feel like I'm in this multi-generational scarcity thing that maybe somebody like you could help snap me out of. Tell me more about this book, Brandon, that I need to buy and read.
I think someone like you can snap you out of it if that's a desire. And I think you bring up a really valid point. So we have our own money memories, but where do these memories come from? Where do we store these memories? Like no scientist has been able to find memories in our brain, right?
Yeah.
And so how many of them are just out there in the ether, right? Or where are they being stored? And are they being stored alongside other memories of our ancestors? Or are our ancestors' memories being stored in the land? Is there multi-generational trauma around money? These are all really interesting things to ask.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily need to answer all of those or know those in this lifetime because we may not, but we
Yeah.
can start to examine what are our beliefs around money. And you don't have to answer this one. Then the follow-up question is, like, what do I have to do to rewrite that story? And how
Right.
can I rewrite that story? So when we talk about the 4 pillars of conscious wealth, one of them being perspective is the way we think about money, right? Because we have
Mm-hmm.
billionaires who feel poor, and we have people that are not millionaires and feel abundantly wealthy. And
Yeah.
so how can you have a mindset to enjoy whatever you have, assuming your basic needs are met and you
Right.
feel safe and secure, right? If not, like, so let's just stop there for a second. That is the work, and it's available to you. And embarrassingly, I wrote this book 5 years ago. I will get you a digital copy. We can hand out some to people in some of your listeners who will get them digital
Fantastic.
copies or audio copies. But I embarrassingly wrote. I wrote this. The first book I wrote, a version of it was, I'm going to tell everybody else how to do it, and I was like, this is boring. So I did it in the book, and
Oh my goodness.
it's pretty raw. Some of it I wish I could take back, but it's out there in the world.
I love it. Okay, Brandon, I'm going to give us this parallel and then I'm going to shift the conversation off
As
of
you
me.
like. Mm-hmm.
I just wrote a book called Untangling Spaghetti, a Branding Fable. It's all about KidGlov's process to branding. When I
Mm-hmm.
first wrote it, it was a bullet pointed how to, like, these are all the steps. This is what you do. This is the timeline. Here's all the tools. Here's all the things. I read it myself and I said, this is boring. And I'm a
Mm.
storyteller. So we completely rewrote the book as a story with characters and dialogue and a plot and
Yeah.
a start and a beginning. And it's a fun read. I have a couple people who've read it who are like, where's the bullet points? It's like, well, you have to go online. If you download the bullet points, you can have them all. But the book is a story. So thanks for that. All right. If I could make a rewinding noise, or if I had sound effects, I would make a rewinding noise, because one thing you mentioned a few minutes ago is that you started a school. Can you tell me more about that?
Oh, yeah. So I was working on cruise ships 2 weeks and 2 summers in college. And then right away when I graduated, I just jumped on the ships and I got to travel the world, which was pretty cool for a kid who never left the country. I left the state of Ohio twice as a child
Oh,
to go
wow.
to Disney World and Niagara Falls. And then I ended up on these cruise ships, and I was in Alaska for 4 months, Caribbean for countless months. I went through Europe, all over Europe, the Panama Canal, overnights in Russia and Constantinople. It was an amazing thing, but believe it or not, it started to get a little bit old or dry. And I had this desire to actually live somewhere and not just visit somewhere.
Mm.
And I did have an education degree. That was my and a history degree and an economics concentration. And so I called up a recruiter and said, I want to teach. He said, there's no way you're ever going to get a job you've never taught in a school. Go teach in the United States for a couple of years. We'll get you in the circuit. And I said, well, just call me. If you call me, I will go anywhere. Just give me a week's notice. And so he called me and he said, hey, I got a job for you. Can you go to Egypt in a week? And I said, sure. What am I doing? He goes, well, you're going to live in Cairo. You're going to make $1,000 a month. And look, this wasn't the 1960s. Okay?
Right.
It wasn't a lot of money, but in Egypt, it felt like a ton.
Okay.
You're going to pay for housing, and you're going to be part of the first faculty to open the school. Great. And so I did it, and it was probably one of the hardest things I've done professionally. This is my first job, my first time living overseas. I didn't speak the language. First time living alone. First year as a teacher is notoriously hard, and Egyptian culture is so different that I made a year doing it and I had a great time. I learned a lot, but I also knew that that was way too hot for me, like way too intense. And then I went to Lebanon because 100 years earlier, my family came from Lebanon around the time of the Great Famine. And I wanted to see where my family was from. And so I had that experience of living in Lebanon for 2 years, seeing where my grandfather was born, being there for September 11th. It was a really, really good experience for me. And so grateful that I was able to do that.
Yeah. Brandon, I know you've got a strong heart philosophy for giving back. I'm curious to see or hear about some of the other work that you're doing to make the world a better place.
Sure. I think at this phase in my life, the best thing that I can do is contribute to society. And I can do, right? I can do is to contribute to society. And I do that through our work and through our business. I do not volunteer on boards. I think I would be an asset to board. I'm on one board, but it's also because it's a client's charity and I'm supporting a client. But I'm not a type of guy who sits on a board. I would like to be the type of person who volunteers on Saturdays or Sundays. And honestly, I'm just not in town that much. I'm pretty much on the go. I do give financial contributions to we can talk to local organizations.
Yeah.
And I think there will be a shift in my life where I am not working as much and we're always working, just my work shifts towards board and volunteer and in the trenches. But a lot of my work within serving nonprofits is through financial donations.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. And I think, we work at KidGlov with a lot of nonprofits, and right now is as tough a time as they've ever had, right? And so it's a great way to support impact across the world.
Sure. And a lot of what we do is advise our clients on that type of giving. And it's always important to remind people, like, nonprofit is given a special tax status because oftentimes you shouldn't make a profit off of it.
Right. Right.
So for instance, I support, and I just got a letter for them yesterday, so it comes to mind, the Covenant House in Atlanta, Georgia, which helps young people who do not have a place to live.
Yeah.
Like, why do we need to make this a profit model, right? It's disaster relief. It should not be a profit model. So nonprofits are needed because there's not a profit model that supports it. Now, there are some hybrid models that we look at that do create revenue, and that's important too. And so, like, as we build out portfolios, and I say portfolios of investments for social change, right? We're investing in the Covenant House for social change. As we build out these portfolios, it's important to see, okay, to get a mix. How am I alleviating suffering? How am I creating hope? And in my mind, like, how am I creating beauty? I like to think of all of those. I think it's absurd to think we don't need the arts. Because to say we don't need to support the arts is almost to say we don't need to support beauty, right? And like, what is life without beauty? I don't want it.
Right.
And then also there's such a mix. I just heard, I just spent a week at the Chautauqua Institution, and it was on community and art, and hearing from some, like the head of Bloomberg Philanthropy and the former head of the Kennedy Center. And art is not just about art. It's about catalyzing community. It's about opening minds. It's connecting people. And so those three kind of general tranches is how I look at, and we look at how do I fill those buckets with it. And then the second thing that we think about is systematizing philanthropy. So how do I systematize it for myself? I have a rule that I am going to give a percent of either my net worth or my net salary to a donor advised fund. So to this type of vehicle where I can give charitable giving. And whatever one is greater. And I have my team keep me accountable. At the end of the year, we look at the two numbers and we figure out which one's bigger, and the money goes in there. And by systematizing it, and we encourage our clients to make a system from it, it doesn't get away from you. If you say, I don't know, is this enough? Is that enough? It's like so weird. It's just so hard to answer. And then one year you might say, boy, that's like last year for me. I was like, boy, that seems like a lot. And then it dawns on me. Oh, that means I made a lot last year.
Yeah, right,
I
right.
mean, like, okay, that's
That's
okay.
good. That's
I can
good.
do that. And then I also don't have to think about it for weeks, usually early in the fall. Where are we at? Where are we headed towards? Okay, let's go ahead and move this into that account. And that's what we do.
That's
So,
amazing. I like that idea. I wrote down the three principles that you mentioned earlier too, because I think they're so strong. I think you said alleviate suffering,
mhm.
provide hope, and create beauty.
Yeah, that's how I think about it. Those are
I
the
love
buckets I
that.
think about.
I love that. So, Brandon, you've got so much going on. You've done so much. You've had a wealthy life, I would say, across the board and all the pillars. It sounds
Have
like.
I ever?
Yeah, what's next for you? What's on the horizon?
Well, my dream, Lynn,
Yeah.
is to make a docuseries. That's my dream, and I
Wow.
want to have a TV show where I'm going around and interviewing people who are a custodian of their wealth, who are exemplifying these pillars without even knowing these pillars exist of conscious wealth, and telling their stories. Because I don't need to debunk the stories of all the billionaires, of all the greed that is seen with some billionaires, right? Or I don't need
Right.
to debunk the glamour. I don't even need to shine a light on that. I want to just kind of bracket that and talk about, like, how is wealth being used in a generative way? How is it creating life?
Yeah.
How is it creating opportunities for others? And how are other people doing that? So not just for people who have the assets and want to live that way and want to learn those models, but for people who are coming up and aspire to have financial wealth, to not have to maybe learn all the lessons I've, and to learn from these other people. That's what's next for me. So, any producers?
I know quite a few producers and several documentary producers. Brandon, that is actually what I was going to ask next. How could this podcast and our listeners help support you in that dream? Because that dream is amazing. I think we probably even have some documentary producers listening right now. If they are, how would you like them to connect with you on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn's fine. Also, our email is just Brandon at
I love
consciouswealth.com.
that. Very generous of you giving your email on the podcast. But we have great listeners who are
That's
very
okay.
socially conscious and
That's all right.
we'll
I'm
use
not
it
worried about it.
responsibly. We'll use it responsibly. So, Brandon, I have loved this conversation so much. I've two more questions for you related to the work that you're doing in conscious wealth. And then I want to ask you the question I've been saving up. But first of all, so what advice would you give to families or individuals who want to make positive impact with their wealth, however it's defined?
So that's it. I would say to challenge yourself to expand your definition of wealth. Challenge yourself to think. So if you're just thinking of, well, my wealth is my money, and if I give away money, then I have less wealth. That definition doesn't work. So
Yeah.
I would say, one thing I would say is expand your definition of wealth to include your mindset, your physical health, your community. And so a lot of times we have people say, well, like, because we deal a lot with what we would call multi-generational wealth, and people would say, well, how am I going to be able to, like, how much should I give my kids? And how I can't have and so they get stuck having that conversation about money. That happens all the time. And I say, well, if you're going to give them multi-generational wealth, remember that wealth is all of these four things, and let's start giving them the non-monetary aspects
Yeah.
first. So that's one thing of advice I would have. And then if you get stuck in that thing and saying, well, another thing that people get stuck on is, how much should I give my kids? And the answer is, and to me, a quote by Khalil Gibran, who the Lebanese claim is their poet, and so I'll take it, which is, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself.
Mm-hmm.
They do not come from you, they come through you. And so, in fact, all children on earth are your children, right? And so when we expand this definition of who are our children, and as we are all one, then our impact should cascade across. If we have that expanded definition, then our impact can expand beyond just our immediate family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That is deep and really good advice. And I do want to note that that is the second poem that you've shared on this podcast. So, and that in itself is a beautiful thing. And I really do appreciate that.
Thank you.
Brandon, for people who are listening, you've already given us your email address. They want to connect with you. They want to learn more. How do they find more information about Conscious Wealth?
It's consciouswealth.com. So
Okay.
we've got the website. We have two sides to it, living and investing. There's resources on both. One's an educational platform. The living side, investing, is the investment platform. Yeah.
That's great. We'll get that link, although it's pretty easy. It's yourname.com, but we'll get that link in the show notes on the KidGlov website as well. All right, Brandon, you have shared so many inspirational things.
Thank you.
But this is the question I ask on every podcast because I love a great inspirational quote, a great poem. Can you give us a few of your own words of wisdom to inspire our listeners?
Sure. Can I give you two?
Absolutely. We'll take two.
Okay. So there's two things my team will hear me say all the time, and I can't say they're always happy to hear it. The first is, if they're listening, they've already said it.
Of course they're listening. They're all listening copiously and taking notes, I'm sure.
So the first one we have is don't bury the lead. That's something they hear me say all the time. We always, when we're having conversations with clients, when we're putting something online or whatever, is right away, just say right away what you want or what you need or what's important. And then give all the depth.
Yeah.
So I'll always tell people don't bury the lead. That's not so inspirational, but they've heard that a lot.
You know, it's a good one though, because some of us keep hearing this sandwich theory, right? Like, tell me a compliment, tell me the thing, and then tell me a compliment, which makes you skeptical whenever you get a compliment from that person, right? Like, just tell me, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you. Don't bury the lead. We got you.
Don't bury the lead. And then the second, so breaking a record here, I'm going to go for 3 for 3 on poetry.
Ooh, yeah.
Is another thing I tell the guys a lot and gal is that pray for rain, right? And so that's the title of a poem from Joy Harjo, a Native American poet laureate, I believe, in the United States. But also Jimmy Baldwin used to say that, civil rights activist. And the idea behind pray for rain is that we're just going to keep planting seeds.
Yeah.
And we're not in charge of what happens with those seeds, right?
Yeah.
Where's my journal? I just wrote this morning.
Brandon, this resonates with me. I'm just going to say, I've mentioned in my moment of vulnerability, my family who has family stories of living through the Dust Bowl and the Depression. The praying for rain resonates in a big way.
Yeah. T.S. Eliot said, for us, there is only the trying. The rest is none of our business. And so pray for rain is like, just plant the seeds and the rest is none of our business. It'll take care of itself. So
I love this. I am going to note for our listeners, because they won't see this video, that during this conversation, Brandon, you have twice just had at the ready poetry and quotes, and I'm so inspired by that.
Just covered with poetry. You can't. The whole place is filled. So that's what we got.
I love
and it's so life-giving. So
I love it.
Well, thanks for your time today. This is a great conversation.
Yes. Yep.
I loved how you were willing to talk about some of your questions and struggles with money, because we all have them, and the more we talk about them, the better.
Yep. I think normalizing these ideas, bringing out the things that have been in the darkness will lead to light for everyone, right? And so I think that's important. I actually do have one last question for you, Brandon. I just like to tie this in a bow by saying, what is the most important thing you would like people to remember about this conversation?
Well, I think if we're talking, so that's a great question. Part of the journey that we go through with money is to get to the point where we say, I have enough. Right? And once we get to that point, we can also get to the point where it's, I am enough. And getting to that point of I am enough is where you can really start, as your listeners want to do, is to make an impact. It's really hard to make an impact if we don't believe we are a child of God, if we are part of the universe. if we're not connected to everyone else. I think the part of the conscious wealth ethos is getting to a point where we can let go of striving, and that's where impact is made.
Yeah. Brandon, the whole reason I have this podcast, The Agency for Change, is to meet people like you and to have conversations like this that really inspire me, that will inspire others. And I just want to say, I believe the world needs more people like you, Brandon.
Thank you.
More companies like Conscious Wealth. And thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you. It's been lovely.
We hope you enjoyed today's Agency for Change podcast. To hear all our interviews with those who are making a positive change in our communities, or to nominate a changemaker you'd love to hear from, visit KidGlov.com at KidGlov.com to get in touch. As always, if you like what you've heard today, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.